From the Ticats Audio Network, this is a Ticats This Week, built by Turkstra. Whatever your next home project is, build it better with Turkstra. Visit TurkstraLumber.com today.
Well, there's never a dull day for the Tiger Cats. It has been an eventful season. They've got the Edmonton Elks on Saturday at Tim Hortons Field, and 2-7 record. The Elks and the Tiger Cats with that 2-7 record, so someone's going to get to 3. Welcome to Ticats This Week. I'm RJ Broadhead, and two of my favorite all-time Ticats, Rob Hitchcock, Luke Tasker. Great to have you two guys here, and I think we got a little bit to talk about. There's, is there a quarterback controversy, or is it pretty straightforward right now? What do you think, Hitch?
Well, I could tell you that people are they're gonna talk how they want to talk, right? Levi Mitchell's first or second in the league right now in yardage. He doesn't have a great first quarter. He gets pulled. Powell goes in and he does well. When it's not there, he's not forcing the ball. He's running and he's getting those 6 to 10 to 12 yards like he did. Of course, you're not gonna get much of that with Bo. And I think this year, as many yards as he's thrown for. I think all the games that I've watched, he has tried to force a few in there instead of using the legs, right? So there's a different dynamic in those two quarterbacks, and I think that 2-7, are you throwing the towel in? You don't. I mean, your three games. Is it desperation time? It's starting to get there, in my opinion. 2-7, and they got a Edmonton coming in that's 2-7 right now. Just came off a big win against BC, so. It's going to be a barn burner of 2-7, two teams, right? So getting back to Bo, I mean, I don't think there's a controversy yet, but the way Powell went in there and moved the ball like he did, he looked really good and really promising. I mean, he understands the offense. He's been there for a couple years, so I think I'd start him in my opinion, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say the same thing. And of course, there'll be a lot of people that are going to say, just maybe stick with Bo and see what happens.
Luke, Scott Milanovich has, from the very first day I talked to him last season, he said turnovers have to be limited and penalties. We'll get into that down the road. Let's talk about turnovers right now. Do you feel that's a factor in this decision, an early interception by Bo, and then Taylor Powell comes in and doesn't turn the ball over?
Yeah, the turnovers are part of it. Hitch mentioned, I mean, Bo's his passing efficiency or passing yardage is not an issue there. A lot of touchdowns through the air. The turnovers, the most touchdowns through the air. That's
also
Bo.
The most interceptions.
Exactly, and so that half of that stat is the issue. The turnovers and what happened in the first quarter in Montreal. That interception was, I think particularly frustrating for Scott Milanovich or for Ticat fans is in that it was sort of just clearly one of those just shouldn't have thrown at balls, just a bad decision, bad direction. And because we've seen interceptions of all kinds this year that are not, so many of which were not Bo's fault or were maybe split 50-50 or maybe the kind of throw where we can't even tell, was that the receiver doing the wrong thing or did Bo make an error? You get those as well, but that first quarter interception, it was a bad direction. It was a bad decision for Bo to go there. And it was on top of what was already, Bo, Levi Mitchell, or quarterback play aside, it was a horrible start to a football game. And so, and we can replay that, we can spell out those moments if we want to, but to cut to the chase, the penalties, that Bo getting pulled from the game was followed by a snap over Taylor Powell's head, and then the interception. And so, It had to happen. It really wasn't that much of a surprise, right? RJ, to you and I in the booth. I mean, it was one of the ugliest first quarters. And as a head coach, you're going to make a drastic decision in that moment.
If I can, sorry, Raj, if I can just say something on top of that, in defending, you always want to defend the quarterbacks and defend the Ticats. There's not a lot of teams this year that are tearing up Montreal. They've got a fantastic defense, number one in the league. So. I think with the mentality of the defense of Montreal, they know Bo is not going to run, so they tee off. They play certain. It's a lot easier to tee off on a quarterback and play different defenses and defend it differently when the quarterback's just not going to run. So there's a little bit different, aspect to the game. When Powell came in, you saw what he did. no one was open because their DBs and linebackers are playing great zone or great man-to-man. And he's got to run because he didn't make a dumb throw down the field. And, of course, he ran for 8, 10, 15 yards, as you saw. So there is a bit difference. And when Montreal's D did tee off a little bit and pin their ears back and go forward and just go for it. So not defending them, but, not too many teams have been doing that to Montreal this year anyway.
I think that's a great point, Hitch. It's back-to-back losses for the Tiger Cats, but it was a home-and-home against, in my opinion, by far the best team in the CFL, both on defense and offense. So that was a tough draw, and it doesn't look good in the standings. However, I feel that puts a lot more importance on Saturday's game against the Elks, that they have to prove that they were just playing a tough team over the past 2 games. We talked about it a bit in postgame, Luke, about it's getting close to a must-win. I'm sure the Elks are approaching this game the exact same way as the Tiger Cats. We got 2 wins. We've won 2 in a row. We still got a chance here. And Tiger Cats, incidentally, started the past 2 seasons at 3-6 in the first half of the season. In 2022, they went 3-9 and still made the playoffs, but they did go 5-1 in their final 6 games. You don't want to rely on a streak like that all the time, but it's certainly not out of reach. How important do you think this game on Saturday is, Luke, for the Tiger Cats to win?
Very important. Even if it's not an East team, to be outrightly not last place in the CFL would be a good thing. And you do have 2 games against Ottawa and 2 games against Toronto left in the schedule, and those are going to be hugely important for the Ticats in those 4-point swing scenarios. And but you got to get back into a winning position with this game. You should have confidence going against this Elks team. You were able to run a very, very efficient offense through most of that game in Edmonton a couple of weeks ago, and so I think a win here at Tim Hortons Field is crucial. It's absolutely critical. And to hit your point about Montreal and related to this game is, Montreal is a really great team, and in that second, third quarter, with Powell under quarterback, they were playing even that good defense very well. Meaning the Ticats were playing even that good defense very well. So you should have confidence to be able to go out there and to win this game against the Elks at Tim Hortons Field.
I agree.
Is it a bit surprising? Bo Levi Mitchell had a career game against the Elks only a couple of weeks ago with 5 touchdowns, so he had something figured out against them. I mean, the turnovers are one thing, and it's halfway through the season, and Scott Milanovich can't play around anymore. He has to start winning football games, but there is that argument, too, that Bo has had success against Edmonton.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, because the turnovers just have to stop. And certainly for the Montreal game, I think that decision was, I don't want to say easy, but maybe a little easy for Milanovich to make that call in the first quarter. Like it just got out of hand so quickly with the turnovers and penalties. Well, then Powell came in and did very well, and importantly protected the football. So I guess if it were up to me, RJ, I don't know if I would put too much stock in how well Bo had played in Edmonton, although that is very interesting because he, for a career high 5 touchdown passes in Edmonton a few weeks back, and now it's Edmonton again. But I think that you err on the side as a coach of the side of making a decision based off ball security in this point, and Taylor came in and protected it pretty well.
Scott Milanovich, speaking to the media, said Taylor Powell deserves a chance. Bo is not happy with the decision, but he expects him to be a good teammate. And I don't know if you saw it on social media. Bo showed his daughters, they had a lemonade stand set up, and he made reference to, now that I've lost my job, we're trying to get more of an income. So he's having a little bit of fun with it and joking around. But in your playing days, Hitch, did you ever see where a star player, a future Hall of Famer, got replaced? Can you think of a scenario in your career?
Well, I don't think anything like that. We didn't have social media back in the day, so
good thing, Hitch, too. Good thing, man.
Very, very good thing. So if Danny Mac had a lemonade stand, I wouldn't have known about it. So no, but there's always quarterbacks get taken out. I mean, the game, it's hard to relate from back, especially when I played. Man, I've been retired for 17 years. So, the game, the game is still the game. And when a quarterback's not doing well, Danny Mack, I'll never forget, I think the one year he threw for 34 touchdowns and he threw for 35 interceptions and we won the Grey Cup. Like, so it was, I think it's just more or less the guy that's taken over the offense and is going in and has got a good game plan. The coach has got a good game plan for them. They got to be ready to be pulled and put in. And these quarterbacks now, and they were ready before as well, but I really just can't think of anything. Guys just got pulled all the time, and then he was back in the next week to play. So unless barring injury, is something completely different than this. So.
Yeah, Bo's going to be ready. What about you, Luke? In your career, can you ever remember a star player and it was just time he gets somebody's just right at his heels, ready to take that job?
Yeah, it seemed actually consistent throughout my career. I mean, we had when we were 0-8 in 2017, and Zach Caleros and Jeremiah Mazzoli, and then also June Jones came in the middle of that season, and that was just all sorts of things were getting changed. We were at one point during the middle of that season running two different offenses. It was crazy. We had plays getting called from an older offense, Kent's offense, and then June had come in and installed half of an offense as well. So that was really bizarre. But that was a time we ended up turning things around and winning games that season. So it was just amazing. And then it was heartbreaking in 2016 when Zach tore his knee, and we were really a good team. He ended up tearing his knee. I didn't finish that season with an injury as well, along with a handful of other guys. Jeremiah then tore his knee in 2019, and Dane comes in. And then there was a handful of other quarterbacks. Jeff Matthews started for a long while in 2015, and I remember guys getting pulled in and out. We played with two quarterbacks for a lot of games. I mean, Dane and Jeremiah, we played with both of those guys for a little bit. Dan Lefevre and Jeremiah for a bit. I mean, so it was it's wild, and it's a tumultuous career. And Bo is, when in years to come, this is not going to a week like this is not going to tarnish Bo Levi Mitchell's name or long-term legacy in the CFL. He's a Grey Cup winner and one of the best to do it. So that's not something that's at stake here. But it's a 2-7 reality with a very good East, and so it seems like it's going to be Taylor Powell's turn to try to turn things around.
I did get hit in the head a lot, guys, and something just triggered my mind a long time ago. So you'll like this story. I think it was 97, and we called but the fans and the coaches called this guy Happy Feet. Played a bunch of games, threw some picks. It wasn't good enough for the Ticats, and we traded him to the Montreal Alouettes, and that was Anthony Calvillo, and I don't think he had a very good career.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't make anything of himself in the CFL.
He didn't, but you know what he did? He played behind Tracy Ham in 1998, and I mean, he was playing behind Dunnigan for a little bit, so he, learning from those two quarterbacks right off the top, and Tracy in 98, and then he went in, of course, in 99. So it was one of those things where I just remembered that they called him Happy Feet. He was in the pocket, Happy Feet throwing picks, and it's like, man, who is this guy? He came from Vegas in 94, and all of a sudden 17 years, the best quarterback almost ever played. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. and now a very important role with the best team in the CFL as they're moving forward. So yeah. But yeah, that's amazing, Hitch. That's it's kind of, I have to say, it kind of feels like a thorn in the side, or a burr in the rear end for Ticat fans.
Yeah, that's funny.
For Taylor Powell going into this game, and maybe it's the rest of the season, we don't know who will be the starter, but we do know for next game it will be Taylor Powell. He's got pretty much 2 seasons with Scott Milanovich running the plays, and he and Bo Levi Mitchell have a really good relationship, so you'd have to assume that even on the sidelines, Bo will be going over some video with Taylor Powell between plays and series, and for a young quarterback, having not only your coach is your offensive coordinator, but a future Hall of Famer in Levi Mitchell. This seems like it could be a really good scenario for Taylor Powell, doesn't it, Luke?
Yeah, he certainly has a group of guys, and Scott Milanovich's quarterback background, of course, is interesting. He's head coach, quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, and he certainly had a career playing quarterback. So I would think that Taylor will benefit from that. He's also, Taylor, I mean, strikes me as just a really just kind of cerebral guy. Like, one thing I like about that. So he can be a little dry in interviews, RJ. I don't know if
we're gonna break him down. We
you
are
really
got to
work on him. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get him.
You really got to work on him to crack a smile and to give you a Hitchcock-esque response to a question. But I do think that one of the things he is that the moment doesn't feel too big for him. So halfway through the first quarter, all of a sudden you're going to go play 3.5 quarters, God willing, and he does so very calmly. Like he's not really hyped up or overly energetic. Sometimes you can almost overdo that with your excitement or your adrenaline getting into something. And you know what it often leads to when a quarterback is overly excited or wants to take over the game, wants to fix all the problems, leads to interceptions. But he sort of seems to me like he has an ability to not let the moment get too big for him. And as they go forward with Milanovich calling plays and a veteran like Bo, sort of sounding board on the sidelines or sort of talking through some things, we may see a very successful Taylor Powell.
I think if I could just tap into that a little bit, Luke, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good for Bo as well. I mean, he's been the guy this year. Now he's going to be able to. I mean, this not taking anything away from his play. He's been played fantastic this year. I mean, he's, like we said, touchdowns and leading yards. But I think now with him sitting back and actually seeing, looking at the board and looking at the plays that are being called in and watching for a little bit might just hit reset on this, right? You might just see something. He's a veteran guy. 13, 14 years he's been in the league. He's been there before, so I think it's always good for a quarterback like to sit back and actually see, watch for a change. And maybe, Powell did not throw an interception or give the ball up last week, and he did take it down and run it and throw those little check down passes to keep the sticks moving. So I think it's good for him maybe for a game or two to take a peek at this. And I'm sure we're going to see him back. I in my opinion, I think he's still got it, and we hope to see him back. But I think it's going to be a good reset for him just to sit on the sidelines and watch this one this week.
Yeah, could totally be right, and that sometimes that kind of thing happens.
Yeah, I agree too, Hitch. It's it could be a real positive. And bottom line, Tiger Cats need to start picking up some wins, but they need to get off to better starts. Actually, in the last 3 quarters against Montreal, they outscored Montreal 23-18, so they won the last 3 quarters. However, they were down 15-0 after the first quarter, so that's the problem. And it has been a problem all season getting off to a better start. They've only scored 24 points in the first quarter this season. That's through 9 games. They've scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and we're going to be keeping an eye on this Saturday, Luke. Tiger Cats have turned the ball over on their first possession of the game in 3 straight weeks. That is shocking, but it's something that has to change. What did you do to try to get yourself ready for games and make sure you were prepared and started on time and didn't allow things to deteriorate early on?
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier this year when specific to me and what my role was with Tim White and sort of the slow start he got off to. When the problem is turnovers, it's so hard to say this because I should say, that Scott Milanovich's team and Mark Washington and all those guys are preaching ball security. Mark Washington's preaching takeaways, and Scott Milanovich and his guys are preaching ball security. But that you have to keep doing that. It has to be messaged every day about how important it is to take the ball away and how crucial it is to not turn it over. When I was having an issue like that, there was times where I fumbled the ball. I remember an interception going off, like a ball going off my hands and creating an interception. Though it was sort of it would have been a really hard catch, but it was one of those that I was sort of had a part in that interception. And
it was only once.
Only once. No. I don't know, actually. Surely maybe it happened more times. But the fumble, for sure, I had multiple fumbles, and I remember just really thinking about it, like sleeping about, like thinking about how it would feel to have really good ball security when I catch the ball and turn up the field, and what I would look like doing that, and what the problem was on the play that I fumbled the ball. One time, like I said, it was coming back from an injury, and I really wanted to start playing great because I had been out for the season. So I did a little bit. I caught the ball, tried to break a tackle, did a little bit more than I should have, knowing that the play was kind of dead, and then of course got the ball hatcheted out of my arm. So, and you just relive those things and think about how it is to fix it. So I'm thinking about James Tuck right now, who caught that ball over the middle in the first drive of the game, and a fumble was caused, and he's got to really personalize how to fix that issue. And then Taylor Powell, who will now be a quarterback, to visualize even those plays where you decide not to throw the ball, and to sit and to not be surprised, because a couple times a game when you really want to put the ball downfield and you just can't do it. And so you can get it personal to each man has to think that way about it, but collectively it only takes one to make the fumble, and that's why it's the best team sport there is, because it's a high risk, high reward situation out there. So we'll see. But Tim Hortons Field again, and an Elks team that, like I said, you have confidence playing. So hopefully that is part of their ability to turn this around.
Hitch, I'm going to jump in before you comment on getting off to a better start, because I watched you play, loved watching you play, see that number 42 up in the Wall of Honor. I kind of have a feeling if you sensed the team was a little bit flat, that someone on the opposition was going to take a big hit. Was that your mentality?
Well, yeah, of course it was, but I'll tell you, just to get on that, I tried to, maim anybody that I could that came across those hash marks, right? The hash marks are a little tighter now, so it'd be a lot easier, but they're a little wider when I played, But yeah, it's a big play. But we always said too is let's set the tempo with a big hit on special teams, running down on a kickoff, or let's try to get an interception or try to get a turnover. But we always made it clear to the guys, let's not over try to do it, because when a DB breaks on something and then all of a sudden the receiver breaks it upfield on an out and up, and you're thinking he's going to throw the out, and you're breaking to try to make that play because it's instilled by the coaches. We need to get a turnover. Let the game come to you. Just play your game. Those plays will come to you. So we've always stressed that as, the good defenses that I played on, especially, we were pretty good at saying, let's not do something stupid. If it's a 5-yard out, 6-yard out, let him have the throw. Let's come downhill and make the tackle on the guy and make him pay for it. So let's not make that. So those, I think guys now are trying to, the turnovers are happening on offense, so that the defense naturally wants to say, well, we need to go get it back, and let's go and do everything we can too. I see it so many times this year, not just with Hamilton, but I've seen so many times this year where guys are not making tackles. They're going for the strip, and they're trying to pull the ball out. The guy gets another 12 yards because 3 guys can't get the ball off him. They're not making the tackle, the initial tackle, what you're supposed to do when you play football. So those are things that, I'm hoping that's not what's going to happen, but let's secure the play first, get the guy down, turnovers will come.
That's interesting, Hitch, because we've talked about it all season. Tiger Cats have 9 takeaways. They don't have any in the second half, which is a bit surprising. But we've talked about it on Ticats this week. We've talked about it on the pre-half, post-game shows. They need more takeaways, and you're saying stop trying to get them. They'll just happen. Is that right?
Well, it's easy to say, right? But I played defense for a lot of years, and you watch enough film, you see tendencies on the offense, you see certain things, and yes, you can make a play. Like when I played safety, I had Steinhauer and Gerald Vaughn on my one side, and I said to those guys, I'm going to go, you guys lock down that side, I'm going to cheat over your side, and then I'm going to take off to the wide side of the field, and I'm going to go try to make a play on the other side. Because I communicated to my other two saying you got no help over the top. So there was a couple different things that I did as a safety that they knew that I wasn't going to help them out. So, I would cheat over to their side and the quarterback sees that. You play little games, then all of a sudden on the snap of the ball, you take off, you get a little skinny post route by the third receiver and the inside receiver, and I'm coming downhill and I'm either making a pick or I'm blowing them up. So that just goes with film work and different things. I don't know if they're allowed to do that now, because I just told my guys we were allowed to do that. As long as we communicated and guys understood where they were on the field, we were good with it. So
those were a couple of pretty good guys to communicate with too.
oh yeah, just guys, you're not going to see me today. You have fun over there. That was good.
Well, what about you, Luke? As a receiver, did you like when the defender would try to strip you of the ball and you get a few more yards, or
Yeah.
what was your feel on it?
I remember a couple instances like that where, they guy assumes that the tackle is made and starts to either take his foot off the gas or go only for the ball, and you kind of unexpectedly spin out of something. Sure, that is part of it, but I tried and tended to have good ball security for the most part, and so that was fine if that's how it was going. That was going to be played, but for what Hitch was saying earlier, I just can resonate with that idea that you just can't force things in football. You can't try to do more than your own responsibility. You can't try to be a hero outside of yourself all the time. You just have to do your job great. But there's that balance between, as a receiver, fighting for extra yards when you're risking ball security or risking, an unnecessary big hit or something, and there's, as a defensive back, of going for just a knockdown, or do you go with both hands and think to get the pick? But if you miss, it could be a reception and no tackle. So there's those little delicate balances in sports that make the best athletes, because they know which risk, which percentage to play, or no is not the right word. They have a feeling for which percentage to play. Should I get out of bounds right now because that's better for the clock, or do I fight through this tackle and try for more? Do I go for the pick, or do I just let him catch it and make the tackle? We're talking about the essence of athletics here. You just gotta do your job with greatness, and there's 1,000 little decisions between every snap that every player has to filter through in microseconds. It's an amazing sport. We're talking about, it's like sports psychology that we're talking about, I guess, right now. It's really just, it's really fascinating. And it's like any given Sunday, the inches that we need are all around us. It's just so true. I mean, how easily could this game have not been 15-0 after that first quarter in Montreal? Little things. James tucks the ball a little bit better. Bo just runs on that. And who knows how the game progresses, but the best teams, for some reason or somehow, tend to come up with the wins and make those plays like Montreal's doing right now.
Yeah, Montreal, it was close in both those games. There were times where it felt like, hey, Tiger Cats might get this. They might get the comeback, but Montreal was able to get the victories, of course. And like you mentioned, Luke, they're Grey Cup champs. They've lost like once since September of last year. Hitch, you raised a point with the communication with the DBs. Last game against Montreal, and Montreal's offense is the most productive in the league right now. Tiger Cats secondary, the secondary very well, but they only had one player starting that had over 2 years experience. That was Richard Leonard. Everybody else was either in their first or second year. So that's a pretty inexperienced group to be going against Montreal. Do you feel that it takes a while for that communication to develop, and maybe in 2 years you don't have it yet?
I don't think so. They're football players. They get paid to do the job. That's why they're on the field. So that's all in the week's preparation for when they watch film together with the linebackers and the D-line. Everyone's communicating with each other. They're talking. I got inside out here. I'm doing that. Like, I don't see a lot in the first 5 games or so. I was watching games and I'm like, well, why are these guys playing, safeties almost 18, 19 yards off the ball at the snap? And guys are, 10, 12 yards off, and they're just throwing underneath passes and they're coming up. And I get zones, but play levels. There's a couple different things in defenses that you can do to disguise certain things. And I didn't see a lot of that. And I know Mark Washington's, a heck of a defensive coordinator. He's got these guys rolling. But getting back to the 2 years, these guys can communicate. They're football players. They need to talk. They need to talk during the play. They need to talk right before the snap of the ball. I got inside, I got that, whatever it is, hand signals, gestures, whatever it is. That's what we did. That's what every football player does on defense. And I'm not seeing a lot of that this year. I don't see a lot of the great communication, but in terms of the year's experience, sure. You can say that they're young or they haven't had a lot of CFL experience, but they're still football players. They're still there because they're there because they're good enough to make this team. So I don't use that much. I think that they're going to be able to go out and they're put in good positions to make plays. They'll make plays when they have to, and they're going to have to do that starting this week.
And Stavros Katsantonis and Jamal Peters are close. We don't know yet if they will play on Saturday, but that would definitely help the Tiger Cats secondary.
That helps. It does, for sure.
Do you think it makes a difference, Luke, if the Elks... We don't know if Trey Ford will start yet. He got hurt in the last game, but he was still hanging around on the sidelines, and they did have some success against McLeod Bethel Thompson. It does seem like two very different quarterbacks to prepare for. I know the Tiger Cats are going to say it doesn't matter who starts, but do you think it matters?
Well, they did have a lot of success against McLeod Bethel Thompson, or you could say he really struggled against the Ticat defense in Edmonton a few weeks ago. Trey Ford is a little bit he's a hard one to prepare for, and not just schematically, although you're going to have maybe, a lot of ways to do it. You just have a really, really hard and wide contain, or you have a quarterback spy that from the linebacker level that has to, that cannot let loose the quarterback. But you got to do something about it, and it does sort of concern me. He was, the way he kept some plays alive at the fourth quarter in Edmonton a couple weeks ago was kind of heroic, the way that he was doing that, and he moved the ball down the field pretty well. So we'll see what his health is like, but it's almost like it's less strategic, seems to me, honestly, and more execution. It's just about who's going to win those battles on game day, regardless of who is which quarterback it is.
What do you think, Hitch?
Same thing. I mean, Edmonton's defense and Hamilton's defense are going through the same thing. Powell's a runner, Mitchell's not, Bethel Thompson's not a runner, Ford is. So, when those guys, that screws up. When you have a running quarterback, that really screws your defense up, right? Because he gets out of that pocket, and now the DBs are strained because he's out of the pocket, and either your linebacker's got to fly up and make a play, and that opens up a pocket about 10 yards down the field. So there's so much that can happen when the quarterback gets loose, and we saw that last week with Powell, right? So they're gonna play for both of them, of course, and they're gonna have a game plan for each one of them. But you can't teach running, right? And Ford and Powell right now are looking really good at running the football if they can get out of that and start making plays with their feet. And to get off a good start, the question earlier, I think you're going to see, and I'm saying it today, I think you're going to see a better start from Hamilton just because of the running fact with Powell. If they can establish that run, whether it's handing the ball off or him taking the ball and just moving the sticks or getting 2nd and 4 instead of 2nd and 10, I think you're going to see a big difference this week with him running. So,
first quarter for the Tiger Cats last week: fumble, interception, a safety, a missed field goal, and 6 penalties. It has to be a better start. The fact they made a game out of that is impressive. The last 3 quarters were much better. Ticats haven't scored a touchdown in the last 2 games in the first 3 quarters. The touchdowns on offense, the touchdowns they've scored on offense have come in the fourth quarter. Luke, is that something that you're concerned about the Ticats offense, or is that Montreal's defense?
Yeah, you do have to give credit to Montreal, but no, with each of those plays you just mentioned, the penalties, snap over the head, and the 2 turnovers, that's each of those plays is taking away an opportunity for a successful offensive play. One of those penalties early on was a large gain offensively that got negated with the penalty. Both of those turnovers in the snap are just chances you don't have. Like, it's like Wayne Gretzky's thing. Like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like, you get 0 yards on 100% of the plays that are reversed because of a penalty. How about that? I don't, or something. There's something there. Like, there's meaning like it's just an opportunity that you didn't even effectively get. That's
we got to get that quote in the Ticats locker room.
I can't remember it now what I just said, but if we can, we'll roll this back and
it's recorded. Yeah, we'll find it.
Ask me, I already forgot.
Yeah. it's just missed opportunities, and it's the same problems that are coming from. All the problems are coming from the same root, which is turnovers and penalties. So the most penalized team. And after this week, RJ, I don't know if the Ticats dropped to the ninth. They went into last week as the 8th place team for the turnover ratio, had a -2 ratio, and you're nodding at me that they are now the 9th. they did
yes.
drop so they're the most penalized team and they have the worst turnover ratio. If you got average on both of those issues, you're probably going to see a handful of games or fall the other way. So, that's the touchdowns will come if you fix some of those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Edmonton, the team they play on Saturday, 7 o'clock, Tim Hortons Field. Be there if you can. Tiger Cats need the support to make this playoff push in the second half. If you can't make it, ticats.ca/listen. Rob Hitchcock will be on the pregame show with Bubba O'Neill. Luke and me will have the call. Elks are +1 in the turnover ratio, yet they have 2 wins this season. So,
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising with the drastic difference with the Ticats at -8 according to the statistics. Yeah. When you look at this this receiving core for the Tiger Cats, 9 receivers have caught a pass players have caught a pass in the last 2 games. So they're moving the ball around. One guy who stands out is not only because he's 6'8", but Giovanni Robinson. I remember Scott Milanovich in training camp saying he wanted to get a tight end more involved, and he scored his first touchdown 2 weeks ago, had a big play in the last game. Are you happy with his progress, Hitch, that you've seen over the past couple of games?
Well, I have. I mean, you have a target like that that can make catches. You throw the ball up in the air. These DBs aren't going to be, jumping 6'8" to get up there with that wingspan. But
he's got a basketball background, so he can jump too.
Yeah, big receivers. Big targets like that. He's not running up the field for 70-yard gains, right? He's catching the ball underneath and trying to make plays and move the stick. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think the receiving core. They've got a great receiving core, and Bo's throwing the ball this year to them. As we've alluded to earlier, with how many passing yards he has. But I don't think that's. I think the issue now is getting establishing that running game, and then throwing those little check down passes. I was talking to my father-in-law. We're up at the cottage here, and my father-in-law says to me, he says, "I don't like those little check passes, those little out passes. They got to go deep." I'm like, "You can't go deep against good teams sometimes. It's down, then deep, down, then deep. So it's little things that you can do at certain times of the game. And fans that watch, they always want to see the long ball, but you got to establish the running game. You have to get the sticks moving. You got to create those. The time of possession is big. You need to have time of possession to keep your defense off the field. So it's just one of those things that when it all comes together, and let's hope that it starts to come together this week. There's been some glimpses of hope, in a lot of these games. And I said to it earlier, I think it was a couple of weeks ago I was on, and I said, we were 2-16 once, and we lost, I think it was 8 or 9 games by less than 23 points out of the total 9 games. We were 2-16, but we could have been 11-7, no problem, because we lost in the last second field goal. We just didn't get that. We learned how to lose. That's what it was with us. We learned how to lose, and we didn't know how to win anymore. And it was every single week. We're down by 4. They go down, march the field with the last second, score a touchdown. We're done. So we lost again. So it's one of those things that just, it gets into your head over time, and that's just got a good coaching staff, so will get you out of that.
Would you sit down with the team's sports psychologist, Hitch? Did you guys have those when you played?
Ozzy was our team psychologist.
It still happens. The Elks, their majority of their losses have been within 3 points, or certainly one score. And Tiger Cats have had a couple they've been walked off a couple of times. So it is one of these teams is going to learn how to win on Saturday, and they're going to get to that 3-win mark and feel pretty good about everything. We got to talk to number 17 about number 17. Shamar Bridges continues to impress. I feel like we talk about him a lot on Ticats this week, but he deserves it. His second 100-yard receiving game, and the second downs, the receptions he makes on second downs, how he gets open, and gets that first down so often. It's a real skill, Luke, because we kind of know he's going to be the guy that the quarterback's looking for, but he still makes it happen.
Yeah, I am really impressed with how he is at the point of the catch. And what I mean by that is there's a way to be, you can catch the ball with some physicality, with just some like aggressiveness where you're catching it and the way that your body's angled, you're making it very hard for people to get their hands or arms into your catch space. You're ripping the ball down away from people, and you're immediately protecting it with your body, with low shoulders and with your angle to slip through defenders instead of exposing all that. And I think it just comes naturally to him. I really do. I think he has a natural sense for that. Demanding your space at the catch and getting your body angled correctly after it. The opposite of that looks like when a guy forgets, loses where the sticks are, like where that first down line is across the field, kind of loses that in the top of his route, kind of forgets that, lazy with his feet at the point of the catch to where he could have just gained the first down, but then does something different and wastes time or space to get that first down. Shamar Bridges is very impressive with getting to the sticks, hard physical catch, shoulders upfield, and if I was a quarterback, I'd be looking for that too, because it just is, it's just an attractive place to put the ball on second down, and he's just efficient in his route running and with the ball in his hands. So good for him. He's an asset to the receiver room.
Sounds like another guy who wore number 17.
I was going to say, I hope he's probably watched some film on a guy that wore 17 that was pretty damn good for that team for a while. So good on him.
That'd be great if he did. I've enjoyed watching him, so good for him.
I got a question for you, Task. I got a quick question.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask a question here?
Absolutely, you are. I'm going to take a coffee break.
Open
you guys
format.
go ahead.
When you left, Task,
yeah.
did somebody wear your number right away?
Yeah, that's funny. RJ, there was a 17, and you may know the name, but it was only a couple weeks. But that was in the year or 2 years after I was gone.
Well, Terry Godwin wore it.
Oh, Terry Godwin, yeah, he was not the first though. He was the second guy. There was a very short stint, and I don't remember the player's name, unfortunately. But he wasn't here long. But I liked Terry Godwin. I loved the way Terry Godwin ran routes last year. And it's funny because Shamar Bridges does not have the same body type as me. He is taller and faster than I was. But Terry Godwin and I did have similar route running skill set, I would say. And he was very smooth in the under coverage. And I liked watching him, Hitch. That was for sure.
So nobody wore 42 for a lot of years. And I don't know if they just didn't like the number.
Well, I think there's some big boots there to fill.
Well, I think
could be.
Yeah, I think that they just didn't want it. I don't think it was provided to them for a few years, and that's pretty good. Unless they just hit that number somewhere, right? So, anyways.
Well, now it's up on the wall forever. So surely they all know.
Luke, Marcus Green, he played one game in 2021 and most of the time on the practice roster. So
yes,
all right, that's good to know.
That was the first time, and then Terry Godwin, I was actually really, he ended up not staying around during this training camp, Terry Godwin, but it was fun to watch last year. Yeah,
awesome.
We talked about the takeaways, Hitch. Was there a guy you played with who on defense just kind of had a knack for getting that ball turned over?
Yeah, there's a few. Coach O, 50 something picks.
Yep.
Gerald Vaughn, bunch of picks. Frank West, bunch of picks. Chris Schilling, linebacker, come downhill. Calvin Tiggle hitting guys and forcing fumbles. We had a pretty badass group for a couple of years, and when we went into stadiums, we put some pressure on these guys, and it was known around the league because Morielli and I talked when he was with the Argos. Mookie Mitchell used to say in meetings man, I ain't catching the ball across the middle. Stiegel in Winnipeg, I ain't going across the middle. I'm not running on Gerald Vaughn. I'm not doing a dig route because I'm going to get my head taken off. I think when again, those were a couple of great years that we had on defenses, but when you get to that point, those receivers, and Luke, you can attest to this, when you know you're going to get hit from guys that are playing great football, and when you make that hit and you turn, you know you're going to get smacked. I think a lot of receivers that didn't catch the ball over the middle is because they're looking ahead to see where those guys were. So if you can get to that point on defense, it's real special. I mean, there's not a lot of times where you've got guys that are just really feared, and we were feared for a couple of years on a couple of defenses that I played on, and that's why we were so successful, because we weren't on the field. We'd kill guys, and our offense would take the ball for 7 minutes, and we'd be fresh all the time. So it was a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Luke, any experience as a receiver making those catches in dangerous spots?
Yeah, well, that's interesting that it snowballs on itself. You know, you end a drive like that with physicality, and then you actually end up being fresher because your offense has the ball out there, and so you even play better and better. Yeah, I mean, I remember I would pride myself on being able to make those catches, and I remember. Who I played against, I mean, who's still Adam Bighill was one of the hardest tackles you could ever get tackled by. I mean, it felt entirely different. You might not know who was, like, if you couldn't see the guy who tackled you, and you're like, well, that was Bighill, because that felt a little different, and the way that he tackled. But Chip Cox and Winston Venable for a while in Montreal, those guys were two really physical, and just they could take out space really well. Chip Cox tackled sort of like beyond what you would think just because of his stature. Yeah. Really good physical player, and I had a lot of good sort of matchups and games against those guys, and times where I caught balls in physical spaces with them. But like I said, kind of like with Big Hill, it felt a little different from those guys. They were doing more than just getting you to the ground, and. It was a meaningless tackle. I mean, not meaningless, but nothing special happened in the game. I caught like a 5-yard out route and got tackled by Winston Venable coming downhill, and it ended up. I played the rest of that game. Actually, scored a touchdown in the second half of that game, but that tackle in the first half ended my season. As it turned out, I had torn my. The way that he tackled, like my abs were torn off of my iliad crest, and a bunch of other things that we can't even talk about. I had parts of me that were purple that we can't discuss on the podcast. So, and all because of if you watched the game, you'd have thought nothing happened, but he's just a physical tackler. So, but yeah, it makes a difference.
You finished that game, Luke?
I did. We had multiple receivers get hurt in that game, and I was. Kind of felt fine. It felt like my upper body wasn't connected to my lower body, like my abs were all messed up. But I did score a touchdown in the second half, and then didn't play till the next season after that. So weird things happen. Yeah,
that's for sure.
So this game Saturday, we talked about the importance really for both teams at 2-7 coming in. Elks have won 2 in a row. Tiger Cats have lost 2 in a row, but. Hitch, do you think the Ticats are feeling pretty good because they just recently had a big win against Edmonton where they put up 44 points?
Well, I asked Milanovich this a couple of weeks ago when I did the game with Bubs after the game, and I just said, where do you go from here? You lost another one, and he says, Hitch, we come in, our players are ready to play. Our coaching staff gets the players ready to play. We make great calls during the games. Everyone, we don't want to lose games, but we're going in there with every intention to win every single game. We practice hard all week, and I know they're doing that week in and week out. Nobody wants to lose games, and nobody wants to be 2-7. It's a reality right now. They just need something. They need a spark. Like we talked about earlier, they need a special teams return. First play of the game or second or third series in, you need something to spark this team, and I find that they're such a great team, and the different dynamics and the different players that they have. I think that with getting that momentum build and getting ahead of teams instead of trying to chase them is huge for them. And I think if they start to do that and get something big in the first 8 to 10 minutes of this game. And show some great momentum, you're going to see a big difference in this game. That's just my opinion. I mean, that's the way we looked at it when we played. I know, Luke, you'd probably say the same thing. We just need that spark. We need that tempo-setting hit or that tempo-setting interception or something, big, long receiver, something just to make this team, to get them sparked, to get their butts moving, and I think you're going to see a big difference.
Luke, your thoughts going into this game?
Yeah. I think the same. And, Hitch, you said earlier, like, you were part of one year, a team that seemed to kind of learn to lose. In 2017, we were 0-8. It'd be hard to say that was a different situation. I mean, it was just a sort of spiraled on itself in a downward direction. And in the years where we battled back from a slow start of the season, there's something to be said about just the each individual athlete sort of having an excitement to be the person that can make the play. I remember, doing that, like, the making the catch that everyone kind of just gives a little bit of just a boost, like, hey, he's still fighting out there. He's still trying to get the first down, and kind of having a smile in the huddle. I mean, we had some fun times out there with Andy Fantuz and Speedy B and a cast of other guys, depending on which year it was, of just like who's going to make a next catch, and we're all going to celebrate together. And whether you're down by 15 or up by 15, just to embrace the possibility that it might be you that makes the big play. That's fun. That's why you're doing it. And so if you lose that energy, if you lose that willingness to maybe be the guy to go out there and do it, that kind of feels to me like when you've sort of learned to lose and you're sort of lost your ability to fight back. And so, we'll see. It's like those second downs from Shamar Bridges. It's Tim White, a big catch, or a James Butler run, and we'll see who can do it at Tim Hortons Field.
Wow, you guys are ready. Great stories, great insight. Hitch, Luke, thanks for all that, sharing those stories and letting us know what the Ticats have to do. Now we'll wait. And we'll see on Saturday if they can get that victory. Somebody's two is going to bid adieu. One of them is getting to 3 wins, the Elks or the Tiger Cats. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff at Tim Hortons Field. We got to pack the donut box, get behind the Tiger Cats. Still half a season to go, and this would be a great story. Tiger Cats get into the playoffs and make some noise. Taylor Powell will be the starting quarterback. Pre-game show on the Ticats Audio Network is at 6 o'clock. Rob Hitchcock will be with Bubba O'Neill. And then the kickoff is at 7. Luke Tasker and I will have the call. For Luke Tasker, Rob Hitchcock, I'm RJ Broadhead. Thanks for listening to Ticats This Week.
This has been the Ticats This Week, built by Turkstra. Whatever your next home project is, build it better with Turkstra. Visit TurkstraLumber.com today. Like and follow the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast content, and get a deeper understanding of your Hamilton Tiger Cats.